Hello, my name is Michael Talaia, and for this video, I will be asking the question, how effective is creatine supplementation for muscle growth? This is something that I've asked myself, and throughout this video, we will be talking about what creatine is, um, why people might supplement creatine, and then go through some clinical trials to see what scientists have been able to discover about creatine and muscle growth. First off, what is creatine? Creatine is a natural substance that we can find in our bodies already. Um, we are able to obtain creatine from the foods that we eat, specifically proteins. We get creatine from our proteins that we eat in our diet. So the more proteins we eat, the more creatine that we will get. Creatine in our body is found inside of our muscles. It allows for our muscles to work properly, and the main function of creatine is it helps produce energy for your muscles when we are lifting heavy weights or doing strenuous activities that put a lot of strain on the muscles. This is a graphic to show how creatine does work. So we start off with ATP, which is the main energy source of our body. It allows us to do almost all functions inside of our body that need energy to be done. And as we do physical work like weightlifting, running, strenuous exercise, the high energy ATP gets converted to low energy ADP, which is not sufficient to give us the energy that we need. And when we take creatine supplementation, or creatine in general, creatine promotes the regeneration of ATP. And the more creatine we have, the more ATP that we can generate when we have that strenuous and hard weightlifting that puts a lot of strain on our muscles. And in turn, when we have more ATP, we are able to have more energy to lift more weight and do more repetitions. The first human clinical trial was done by a large group of scientists. And the methods, 43 resistance trained men received creatine supplementation of a placebo over an 8-week period. So 43 resistance trained men were split, and half got a placebo and half were getting creatine supplementation over that 8-week period. And within that 8-week period, each group weightlifted 4 times a week, and they all did the same workout split. The results of this study showed that both groups did show progress throughout the 8-week period, but the group that took creatine showed greater progress than the group that had the placebo. So this shows that the group that took the creatine obtained more muscle mass and was able to do higher weight with more repetitions than the group that did not take the placebo. And a side note about this was that the group that took creatine showed greater muscle growth in upper limbs than lower limbs, which does not contribute to the research question, but it is an interesting fact about this study that they found. The second human clinical trial was a little different, but similar at the same time. This trial dealt with professional athletes. Specifically, 19 trained handball players were placed into a double-blind trial, with 10 taking placebo and 9 taking creatine. So similar, the group was split, with 10 taking creatine and 10 taking placebo. The group before were people who were familiar with weight training, but they weren't necessarily professionals in any facet. But these handball players were professional athletes, so they're a higher grade of athlete, so it is interesting to see how it affects them. They performed a variety of lifts before and after the study, and the data was recorded and compared those two lifts from before and after. And the results of the studies were very similar to the prior one. The athletes increased their body mass. They were able to perform more repetitions until failure, and a higher max weight in all lifts after the trial. So this does support the question that it is effective, because even though these athletes have probably trained for many times, they are still seeing better progression of muscle mass and all these other factors with taking creatine than not. The last clinical trial was done by 34 young adults from age 19 to 35, so a different group again. They do resistance training often, and they were split into two groups, just like the other trials, and one took creatine and one took the placebo. And the results of the trial were very similar to the last two. The group that took creatine saw more progress than the group that did not take creatine. And another side note about this trial is that males saw more progress than females in muscle growth, but at the end of the trial, but both saw progress. To answer the question of is creatine supplementation effective for muscle growth, the answer that we were able to derive from the results of the clinical trials is that yes, it definitely is an effective supplementation to take if you are looking to get greater progress in muscle growth than not taking it. There are many benefits to taking it, like muscle growth, but there are also side effects that you need to be careful of when taking it. But in terms of strictly muscle growth, it is most definitely an effective supplement to take if you're looking to progress more muscle growth. Thank you very much, and that is the end of the video.